Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the CFL DFS video for week number 5. Pretty exciting week. We got 8 games, or not 8 games, 8 teams in total, 4 games in total as well. So it's going to be a pretty interesting one as opposed to last week where we only had 6 teams, 3 games in total. Still was a pretty interesting week. Still was a pretty good week overall for myself personally. But, as we keep moving forward, I'm going to do a little bit more of a recap, but at this point in time, mainly just going through my sheet and then kind of whether or not I'd be overweight or underweight to the field. Obviously, it's hard to get ownership projections for CFL DFS since there's not that much content out there at this point in time, but hopefully this process helps you guys out as I do go through it. So mainly just going to work through my sheet for week number 5 off the bat. Whether or not I play guys for cash setting, GPP setting, kind of a pay down option, or some other notes. Keep in mind, these games are all very spaced out. The slate does start tomorrow night on Thursday, and then I believe it goes through Sunday as well. So it should be a pretty interesting slate just to see how it works out. We got 1 game per day, but keep in mind that we'll be getting some more injury news as the week moves along. So we are going to start out with the Edmonton Elks. They are the first team here. So they have announced already that Taylor Cornelius will be the starting quarterback this week. He's $9,100. But, they don't really have a solid quarterback situation or solid offensive situation at this point in time. So wouldn't be surprised if he comes out, plays bad, and gets benched again. So not really anybody that we really want to be chasing for DFS purposes, although he was all right last season. But not too interested in their quarterback situation. Kevin Brown, at running backs, decent running back, he's $7,800, but the upside really isn't there with this offense at this point in time, so probably not a guy that I'm going to play there either. When we get down to kind of the wide receivers, Eugene Lewis is on IR once again. We got Dylan Mitchell at $6,600. Really hasn't done too much this season, so not really looking at him. Mainly, we're going to get to like Steven Dunbar at $5,800, kind of a potential GPP option if he gets the volume. If he gets a touchdown, he could kind of pay off there. Not anybody that you have to go out of your way to play, but not a bad play by any means. Showed some pretty good chemistry in the past with Taylor Cornelius this season. And then as we kind of move down, we got 2 other cheap options here. So we got Kyron Moore at $2,500. Kind of a pay down option. Been working more as that wide receiver. Earlier in the year, he was doing a little bit of kick returning too, where he got some of those bonus points, but unfortunately not doing that at this point in time. That has gone to CJ Sims, that workload in terms of return game. So has a little bit upside there at $2,500, but probably their best receiving option this week, if he does anything close to what he did last week, is going to be Maurice French, a guy that has had a little bit of NFL experience here and there. Potential cash game option at $2,500, the flat minimum. Came in right away and played a pretty big role for this team overall. And then their defense at $3,600 against the Rough Riders, not really getting there this week since, they've been one of the worst teams at this point in time. Then we move down to the opposite side of the game. We got the Rough Riders. We got Trevor Harris at quarterback. He's $10,600. I have him listed as a GPP option. Probably not a guy that I'm going to get to too much at this point in time. Wide receiver room is a little bit banged up at this point in time. They do have Jake Winicki out this week at wide receiver as well. So we'll see how it is. I think they're going to lean a little bit more on that run game. Jamal Murrow here at $8,000, GPP option for sure, but a potential cash game option. Probably going to be my biggest cash game option, I want to say, at running back position this week overall. He's shown a pretty good workload throughout the season, so definitely would expect him to do pretty similar once again. I think they're going to lean a little bit more on their running game this week overall, as they should be probably leading in this game. And then, some of these wide receivers that are missing for them just overall. So like I said, Jake Winicki is out at wide receiver this week. Then we got Walker, we got Brissa Seenan, probably mispronouncing that too. They're both on IR at this point in time. So really the options that wide receiver that we'd be looking at is Sean Bain Jr. at $6,200. GPP play, if you're playing Trevor Harris, you might want to stack him alongside him. Has been pretty solid throughout the season. Maybe a potential cash game option if you really wanted to go there, but I think there's some other decent wide receivers this week where you probably don't have to go there. And then the other guy that we mainly be looking at would be Tevin Jones this week at $6,100. I will note they did bring in Jarrett Stearns at wide receiver this week. Doesn't sound like he's going to be active at this point in time, but former Western Kentucky wide receiver that played pretty well there. So could be an interesting option moving forward. And then we kind of move down to the Rough Riders defense at $4,100. Potential cash game play against Edmonton, who has, really struggled on offense so far this season. So it should be a pretty favorable matchup for the Rough Riders. If you really want to take a shot on one of those other wide receivers up there that is a little bit cheaper too, you could definitely do that, but not anything that I'm particularly doing at this point in time. Mainly going to be Jones Bain. If you want to get to a little bit of Trevor Harris at quarterback. Definitely makes some sense. But I think mainly from this team, this Rough Riders team, we're going to get to some Morrow. We're going to get to some of the defense, those kind of cash game plays this week, or if you're kind of going out and building some single game lineups. Then we get down to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers once again. So we got Zach Collaros here at $11,200. Still very much a GPP option. Has been pretty solid so far this season. A little bit down last week. They didn't score a ton of points, but it was a little bit tougher matchup there as well. So he would definitely be a guy that I look at. Drew Brown, the backup quarterback, or I assume that he's the backup still. He didn't practice on Tuesday, so mainly been used as a rushing quarterback and stuff like that, but nothing too crazy at this point in time. We'll see if that changes throughout the week, obviously, as we get some of these more injury reports coming out. Brady Oliveira at running back, if you want to roll him out in GPP, you could do it as well. I'll say Greg McCray here at $2,500. Maybe a potential paydown option. It was used a little bit as a running back. Sounds like they used him a little bit as a slot back last week as well. First game that he really played this season. So we'll see how that looks going forward, but potential cheap option. Not sure he has too much upside though at this point in time. At wide receiver, mainly going to be Dalton Shane once again. $12,100 makes a lot of sense to stack with Collaros. He's going to be pretty popular there. Obviously, just a GPP option since he does have that big price tag at this point in time. If you want to go after Rasheed Bailey, you want to go after Drew Wolters-Ziski, you could do it. They have respectable price tags. I have Nick Namiski listed here at $9,500 as a potential GPP option as well. Did not end up playing last week due to the birth of his child. Sounds like he should be back this week, although he didn't practice on Tuesday, so we'll keep an eye out on that as the week moves along. They ended up cutting on wide receiver Jeremy Murphy. So I think Carlton probably can't pronounce his name right. Adeduzi is probably going to be back this week. We saw Grant used mainly as a punt returner. So some interesting options there if you really want to pay down, but mainly from this team, it's going to be the expensive guys. It's going to be Collaros. It's going to be Brady Oliveira, running back, if you want to go that direction. And then probably Dominski and Dalton Shane if we're going wide receiver route. But if you want to mix in Bailey or Wolters-Ziski, you could definitely do that. In terms of defense, Blue Bombers defense going against Calgary, an okay matchup there. Just a GPP option, nothing that I'm going to go out of my way specifically for, but there is a little bit of upside to be had there at the same time. We're going to move down to Calgary. So we got Jake Meyer at quarterback, and he is $9,600. Been a pretty up and down season for him so far. If you want to roll him out in GPPs, makes some sense. Maybe a little bit more of a contrarian play this week. Has a little bit of upside, but we'll see what it ultimately looks like. I think they're another team that could potentially lean on the run just a little bit more this week, kind of trying to slow down the Blue Bombers overall. So, and running back, that is going to make Dedrick Mills, who is a guy that I like quite a bit coming out of Nebraska at $9,300. Look like a pretty interesting GPP play, so I'm going to get a good amount of him this week. Kadeem Carey is on IR, and then Peyton Logan did not practice Monday or Tuesday this week due to a hamstring injury. Sounds like he's probably going to be out at this point in time. So a little bit thin in that running back room. They did bring in, I'm trying to remember who it was, Levanta Bellamy, I want to say it was, former Broncos running back, played, I think, at Western Michigan, if I remember correctly. They signed him to the practice squad earlier this week, so there is a chance that he is active as well. Getting down to the wide receiver position, we mainly have Reggie Beagleton here, who is back from his rib injury, $8,000 potential cash game play. And then, Trey Duke Odom behind him, GPP option at $5,000. Luther, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name, Haka Vahui. We were just going to say it that way. He didn't practice on Monday or Tuesday due to hip injury, so we'll see how that all looks as we move forward. Not too much else here at wide receiver. Markin Michael did come back to the team. He's $2,500. Spent some time on NFL practice squads, mainly with the Washington Commanders. Potential GPP paydown option if he does ultimately end up playing this week. So that's something that we're going to monitor as the week moves along. Some kind of mix and match options here from this team. If you're playing Jake Meyer and you want to stack Beagleton at wide receiver with him, makes a lot of sense. But, if you want to do the reverse, probably going to look at Dedrick Mills as a running back position this week as well. Not really playing their defense against Winnipeg at this point in time. Not quite the most favorable matchup. So we get down to the Tiger Cats here. So Bo Levi Mitchell still on IR. It's safe to assume Matthew Schlitz is still the starting quarterback. I mean, he threw for a lot of yards last time out that they ended up playing since they didn't play last week. So there's a little bit of upside there if you want to get there at $8,600. Nothing I'm super excited about. Behind him, we got Taylor Powell at $6,500. They did sign Kyle Loxley this week. actually just today. And then they ended up ultimately cutting N'Kosi Perry. So that was a kind of interesting move there, but we'll see how that all plays out. Loxley was kind of used as that short yardage quarterback earlier this season. Ultimately before getting cut. So be interested to see how that all works out. James Butler at running back's kind of interesting. A guy that does have a little bit of pass catching chops too. So $9,500 GPP option if you want to get there. A lot of good running backs this week. They're all priced pretty similar though. As we keep moving down, mainly looking at the wide receivers, the two top guys here in Tim White, $10,200, had a pretty big game last time out. And then Duke Williams at $7,300, maybe a potential cash game play if you really want to get there. A couple of different wide receivers that are out there this week, so probably not going to make him a cash game play for me, but if you want to mix them in there, definitely does make some sense. And ultimately, if you do get to some athlete Schlitz at quarterback, playing one of these two wide receivers, if not both, is going to make some sense. And I wouldn't even mind like playing Schlitz and James Butler together. Could be some correlation there that does make a little bit of sense since Butler is a pretty capable pass catcher at that. In terms of Tiger Cats defense, they're playing against the Ottawa Red Blacks this week. So pretty decent matchup. So I would consider them a GPP option once again this week. Then we move down to those Ottawa Red Blacks. And we got news this week that Jeremiah Masoli is going to be the starter this week. He is ultimately a GPP option, offers a little bit of rushing upsides, played pretty decent in CFL at times in the past. Former Oregon quarterback, a little bit up there in age at this point in time, but does have some pretty decent upside. We did get news today that Tyree Adams, the quarterback that started last week, he ultimately didn't practice yesterday due to a knee injury. Now it turns out that is an ACL injury and he will be done for the season. So kind of unfortunate for him, but opens up the door for Jeremiah Masoli once again, who ultimately has missed, the first 4 weeks of the season due to his own injury. So we'll see what that looks like. We'll see if Devontae Williams comes back at running back at $7,000. Devontae Tuggle in his place has played extremely well at $7,200. Could be a GPP option, but if Williams is back, kind of opens up this door of, kind of limbo where we don't know exactly what's going to go on with that situation. When we get down to their wide receivers, not anything like I'm super, super excited about at this point in time. We'll see who Masoli's favorite target ends up ultimately being. If you want to mix match Justin Hardy in there, a guy that does have some NFL experience, kind of contrarian play at $7,200, you can make it the case for that. Nate Behar, he looked pretty good last week going into the week, but really wasn't too involved last week. So we'll see how that all shakes out. And then we have Siasu Mariner at $2,500. Potential paydown option there. First game back last week. We'll see how he looks overall moving forward. And then that Red Blacks defense going against the Tiger Cats. I do consider them a potential cash game option this week, just since the turnovers that the Tiger Cats have had throughout the season. Move down to the Montreal Alouettes as we move down. So Cody Fajardo, probably my favorite quarterback in the CFL so far. He is a cash game play for me once again, $9,500. Unfortunately, didn't quite get there for us last week against Winnipeg, which I was doing a little bit of research or watching some video, and they were talking about his career record, like versus all the other teams in the CFL, is like 70% win percentage essentially, and then against Winnipeg, it's like he's one. I don't even remember what the exact stats were, but it's like 20%. So quite a big difference there. I'm glad he's probably glad to not be playing Winnipeg this week. So definitely do like him quite a bit. Running back position, not too interested in Williams Stanback here at this point in time. Walter Fletcher came back last week and got a little bit of run there too. Not anybody that I'm trying to get to. But wide receiver wise, we're getting to Austin Mack as a cash game play once again at $6,300. Has played extremely, extremely well so far this season. And then Julian Grant actually did have a pretty solid game last week. Consider him a GPP option, but he is $8,600 at this point in time. Not really sure what else to make of this wide receiver room at this point in time. Some of these guys will get some run. They're going to probably kind of mix and match. Cole Speaker was cut this week. Keyshawn Abram went on IR last week. So we'll see how the situation all kind of shakes out. But the top two guys seem to be pretty clear at this point in time. Then we move down to the Alouettes defense. They're going against BC this week. The Lions have been pretty good on offense. Obviously, you take in the fact Vernon Adams Jr. did have 6 picks last week. So if you want to run out the Alouettes defense as kind of a contrarian play, you could definitely do that. And then we're going to move down to those BC Lions. So Vernon Adams Jr., excuse me, $11,100 GPP option. Although he threw 6 picks last week, that's the bad. They kept him in the game. So I guess that's the good thing. They're not really too worried about bringing somebody else in behind him. And at the same time, he was still the top scoring DFS quarterback last week with about 25, 26 points. So he does make a lot of sense to play in GPP once again. At running back, we had Tyquan Mitchell was a little bit banged up last week. We'll see what that looks like going forward, but still got the bulk load of the carries there. LaFrance got a little bit involved towards the end of the game when the game was pretty much out of hand. So if you want to roll Mitchell out in GPP settings, does make a little bit of sense there. And then, looking at the wide receiver news, we really need to see the injury report because Lucky Whitehead did end up missing ultimately last week. So not sure exactly what his status is going to be this week, but mainly a wide receiver. We're going to be looking mainly at Dominique Grimes and Keon Hatcher. Hatcher returned last week, potential cash game play this week at $8,300. And then Grimes had another solid game after missing the previous week. So he's a solid GPP option once again. If you want to stack, those two and Vernon Adams Jr. together, makes a little bit of sense, but you're going to have to pay down in some other spots to make that happen at the very same time. Then I do have McGinnis listed as a potential pay down option. Ultimately, that ends up, whether Lucky Whitehead ends up playing this week or not. Moving down, Lions defense, they're the most expensive defense at this point in time. They're going against Montreal. I think Montreal has a respectable offense, so probably not a defense that I'm getting too much this week at all, if at all. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the sheet. Obviously, that will ultimately be updated as the week moves along. I'm going to bring up DraftKings here so we can talk through a little bit over there too as well. So I'm going to bring that up, share that screen. But like I said, the week 5 sheet, it will be updated as the week moves along. Try to update the injuries as much as possible in there. And, if anything major changes, I'll leave it down in the comments here as well. But patreon.com/Coach Craig Sport, you'll get the updates to that week number 5 sheet. It also has the data from the previous weeks as well. And like I said, in the future, I want to get into a little bit more of the recap. Just haven't gotten the chance to do that at this point in time since it's the second week of me doing this. But moving forward, we'll be trying to do that a little bit more. So from DraftKings, mainly looking position by position now. So in terms of what I would be personally playing, I'm going to probably play a good amount of Cody Fajaro once again this week. Jake Meyer probably going to be underweight to the field, probably going to be underweight to the field on Trevor Harris, probably ultimately be in line with the field on Adams and Colares, and then maybe a little bit overweight to the field on Masoli. But that's kind of just in general where I'll be at. Maybe I sneak in a Matthew Schlitz here and there every once in a while, but it's nothing like super out of the way, I would say. Personally this week at running back, I think, like I said, it's ultimately an interesting position this week. Maybe you're playing a little bit more of your running backs with your defense this week, but there is some running backs that do have some pretty good upside, whether it's a James Butler. He's $9,500. Like I said, he does have pretty good pass catching chops. Dedrick Mills, a guy I like quite a bit coming out of college. If they really rely on the run this week, going to be a solid play there. Oliveira's in play. Taquan Mazel is also in play. I think I called him Mitchell earlier for whatever reason. Might have had that written down wrong in my notes for whatever reason. But, he's in play. But I'm not really too interested in them. Going to be overweight on the field on James Butler and Dedrick Mills and Jamal Morrow. Those would be kind of the 3 that I'm getting to the most. And then Tuggle if Williams ultimately ends up getting rolled out. But that's pretty much where I'd be at in terms of running backs this week. Unfortunately, not too many cheap options though, but like I said, a lot of these guys are pretty much priced in the same price range. Going to try to get a drink of water here real quick though. And then I'm going to ultimately move over to this wide receiver position. So there's a lot of guys at the top. So obviously Dalton Shane's way up there, $12,100. Probably ultimately be a little bit underweight to him this week. Rhymes, probably be in line with the field. White probably ultimately end up being underweight to the field. Lucky Whitehead, obviously injury is going to matter a lot. Dominski probably going to be in line with the field on him this week. Julian Grant probably in line with the field. Ackland really not getting to this week. Hatcher in line or overweight to the field. Bigleton probably end up being ultimately overweight to the field because I think a lot of people are going to be fading him coming off the injury. And with so many other good wide receivers that are out there, it does make a little bit of sense, but do like him quite a bit. Duke Williams probably ultimately in line with the field. A couple shares of Justin Hardy here and there. Not getting Dylan Mitchell. Austin Mack will be overweight to the field once again, although the field was pretty strong on him last week. We'll see if he gets that type of ownership once again this week. Be a little bit overweight to Bain, a little bit overweight to Jones at this point in time. Maybe slightly overweight to Stephen Dunbar at this point. Be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. Duke Odom have a couple shares here and there. Let's see who else here. McGinnis, if Lucky Whitehead doesn't play, I'll have a couple shares here and there. Pretty simple week this week, I do think, though. We're going to keep moving down. Maurice French, I'll be overweight to the field on him, although he'll probably end up being ultimately pretty chalky since he had that big week last week and he has been priced, and a lot of these guys are getting up there in price tag at this point in time. And then defense-wise, I think I mentioned a lot of it when I was talking through the sheet just in general. Not getting into the Lions defense. We have a couple shares of Blue Bombers. Ottawa will be overweight to the field. Rough Riders will be overweight to the field. Alouettes, maybe a share here and there. Stampeders probably not getting to. Tiger Cats, I'll have a share here and there. And then Edmonton Elks probably not getting to at all this week. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of CFL DFS for week number 5. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Obviously, if there's any major injury news, I'll leave that down there as well. But also be sure to check out the Patreon at patreon.com/CoachCraigSport for that updated week 5 sheet as the week moves along, as we get all the injury updates and everything else like that. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you that has supported me, whether it was through the XFL and USFL season or now with the CFL. I know a lot of you guys were requesting this content. Not really much CFL DFS content out there at this point in time, but definitely do appreciate each and every one of you that tuned in last week to watch it, and that is tuning in this week to watch it as well. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, or have yet to do so, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's mainly MLB DFS and CFL DFS. But with that being said, definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in, whether you're watching live or in replay. Definitely means a lot to me. Hopefully each and every one of you have a great rest of your day, no matter which day you're watching this video, and some pretty good luck in CFL DFS this weekend.